Well, this is going to be one hell of a rank list to make. Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to another Super Series Tuesday. And for today, we will be covering the final installment in the Mission Impossible franchise, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Rogue Nation was released in 2015. It was directed by Christopher McGuire and stars Tom Cruise, Jeremy Renner, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, and Rebecca Ferguson. This time around, there is a similar element to the last movie in which that the IMF was shut down in the last movie, but that was because they were framed for the bombing of the Kremlin. This time around is the CIA pushing and pushing for the IMF to be shut down just because they say that they're wild guns, you know, they're loose cannons. They kind of just do whatever they want without any boundaries. So the CIA says, you know what, enough is enough. But alongside that, Tom Cruise is still taking up on that tip that he got at the end of the last movie and trying to track down this kind of super group, like an anti-IMF called the Syndicate. Therefore, since the IMF is shut down, Tom Cruise has to go out on his own and try to track down this syndicate. So at the top of the list, once again guys, Tom Cruise. The guy just keeps getting crazier and crazier with every single one of these movies that comes out. This time, yeah, he, I think, probably one-ups the whole Burj Khalifa thing. We'll get to that later. But again, him playing Ethan Hunt is phenomenal. He is amazing in this role, honestly. There's no way they could have casted anyone else in this franchise. It definitely would not have succeeded without Tom Cruise. They owe it all to him for sure. That's not to say the supporting cast isn't great, but he is definitely the head of this franchise, and he proves it once again. He is actually tied for, I think, the top of my positives in this one, and that is because tying him is Rebecca Ferguson, the leading lady in this movie. And I found she just did such a phenomenal job. Her character brought so much extra to the franchise that you would never really expect it to have. She's just kind of like this mystery woman. You don't really know which side she lays on. There's a lot of flip-flop because she's from like British intelligence, but she also works for the Syndicate, but she's also with Tom Cruise. There's a lot of twisting and turning here, and just kind of her whole mysterious vibe that she has going on to her. Her backstory and everything is so foggy. So all of that just adds this extra oomph to this movie that I think it definitely needed. I have to tie her with Tom Cruise on this one. He's not necessarily beaten yet, but definitely tied. She definitely deserves that one for sure. And next, I guess I could just give it to the supporting cast overall. Jeremy Renner, once again, does a great job. Simon Pegg is hilarious, and I love him in everything he's in for sure. I think it was a great idea to bring Ving Rhames back. I thought he was phenomenal. Again, I love him as Luthor as well, so it was really nice to see him come back. He only had like a little cameo at the end of the last one, so to see him throughout this whole movie was definitely a great thing, I think. I have to say, once again, since the IMF is shut down, you have a much more grounded, team-oriented film. I love just seeing the inner working. These guys trying to work everything out when they're just kind of brainstorming, throwing out ideas, how it's just kind of bare bones. They do, of course, still have all the technology and stuff. It wouldn't be a Mission Impossible movie without it. But this whole much more team-oriented vibe is really good for this franchise, I think. It's not focusing on a whole much wider spectrum. It is very grounded, and you get to know these characters very well. And I still found that you are finding out new bits and pieces of information throughout it, and these characters are very diverse, actually. They're not one note by any means. They are great characters, and seeing them work together so closely is great. And again, the action gets upped in this movie, and I think the action actually got cleaned up in this movie. There's no like corny sound effects or anything like that anymore, and I thought the action was very crisp and very realistic. The gunplay in this is phenomenal. There's, I think, a lot more hand-to-hand combat actually in this one too, and there's one really, really awesome knife fight towards the end. And just even the explosions and everything too, everything looks really good, and it's a lot crisper in this movie, I found, than probably any of the other movies. So the action in this one is definitely something to look forward to if you haven't seen it already. The stunts, again, this is what I was getting to. Tom Cruise hangs on the outside of an airplane. Well, like a cargo plane, I guess, but a plane. And I read in the IMDb trivia that it was actually upwards of 5,000 feet in the air multiple times, and he was literally hanging on the outside of it, okay? You watch this movie, it is not green screen, it is not fake, it is not fans, it is 100% Tom Cruise hanging on for dear life to the outside of a plane. It doesn't get much better than that. But even just that, the stunts in general, just there's a motorcycle chase in this, which is probably the best motorcycle chase I've ever seen in a movie. All the stunt work, the guys flipping off the bikes getting destroyed, the stunt drivers, all phenomenal. So the stunt works, hands down, some of the best in the industry. And I like the idea for the villain. Now, the villain isn't bad. It's Sean Harris plays the villain Solomon Lane, and the whole Syndicate in general I really enjoy, actually. But when he is on screen, I found him to be very menacing, a man with a very good head on his shoulders. He always knows how to anticipate every single little move that is going to happen, and he does a great job at portraying that. And just the whole idea for the Syndicate is phenomenal. Just this whole anti-IMF thing is good. It's like everyone that's in the IMF, just like the bad anti-version of them that does the complete opposite of the IMF, but with the exact same amount of skill. To me, that's such a cool idea. It's so interesting, and I really like it. You see that typically in like superhero things, you know, where you have like the good team, the bad team, they clash. This one, it just feels so cool because it's much more grounded in reality. So to me, that's really awesome. That's a great idea. As well as they do a lot of traveling in this movie once again, and I like that. I'm just going to touch on this very briefly. But yeah, they do traveling all over the world. All that stuff is really nice. You get to see these cities in all of their glory, and with that, the cinematography in this movie is phenomenal too. It goes hand in hand also with the action as well as the on-location shooting. There's barely any shaky cam in this. You get to see everything, and it looks phenomenal. They did a great job. The stunt doubles did good, or if it was the actual actors and actresses, they did it. Bravo. Simon Pegg is the comedic relief in this movie, and he's a lot better in this movie than I think the last one. The last one, he was the comedic relief, but overall, the movie just had a much more funny tone to it. It was much kind of more, not cartoonish necessarily, but yeah, it was definitely going for a much more comedic vibe. This movie's pretty much all serious except for Simon Pegg, but all of his comedy moments in this, his little comedy bits, don't feel forced. You know, they feel very natural, very organic, and I enjoyed his comedic moments in this movie. They always made me chuckle. I don't think there was one beat missed with me. I was laughing every single time he wanted to make me laugh, so great job to Simon Pegg. And I feel like this movie too overall is just more artistic, and the only scene you really need to watch out of this movie to know what I'm talking about is just pretty much the entire time they're at the opera. The music from the opera just is so beautifully interwoven with the action sequences. Just the movie feels so much more artistic, and in doing so, they pushed out a lot of the cartoonish stuff that was in the last movie. In the last movie, that was kind of my problem with some of it. It just, the punches and the kicks and a lot of the fighting didn't really feel real, right? They used a lot of really just kind of cartoonish sound effects, and it kind of pulled me out of the moment. And some of the more over-the-top moments are really dialed back. Now, they are still in this movie, but I felt like they made a lot more sense, and they felt, like I said, a lot more realistic and kind of artistic. They just had this certain artistic beauty to them that the last movie didn't really have. The last movie went for more over-the-top kind of animated feature action, while this one went for a more artistic, kind of beautifully shot and choreographed action. And something very quickly before I get into the negatives is just that I love how this movie addresses the last movie. I found that was something that didn't happen in any of the other movies. They just kind of were movies, and they just kind of kept playing out. They never addressed anything that happened in the previous movie. This movie does at the very beginning, for part of the reason that they're trying to shut down the IMF is like, hey, they purposefully gave this, you know, terrorist nuclear codes, and hey, they nuke just literally took a chunk out of a building and flew into the ocean. Like, you know, these guys are so reckless, we can't trust them. So they definitely addressed the last movie in this one. That was just smart, perfect writing in my mind. And now for the negatives, there really aren't too many for this movie, guys. The first one is just like I said in the last movie, the Fast and Furious syndrome. At least that's what I like to call it. But what I mean is that they survive a lot of stuff they probably shouldn't. Just for instance, kind of spitballing a perfect, not specific example from this movie exactly, but you know, say an actor were to get in a car chase, but the thing is, just before the car chase, he actually died from drowning. He gets resuscitated, okay, a little bit shaky, gets in a car chase. Car might flip like 8 to 20 times, gets out of the car completely unscathed, hops on a motorbike, and then we get into a motorbike chase by chance. And then going at a very high speed on a freeway on a mountain, you possibly fly off that motorbike into a pile of dirt and rocks, and you're still perfectly fine. That kind of tends to happen a lot in this movie, and like I said, it doesn't really pull me out of the moment, but I feel like it's something that needs to be addressed. I understand it needs to be entertaining, it needs to be a little over the top at least to keep it fresh and interesting, but sometimes I'm like, okay, come on, you can at least have a scratch or something. That there is a time jump in this movie. From when the IMF shuts down, it jumps to like 6 months later, and Ethan is on his own just kind of traveling the world, but somehow not one person or any, you know, airport or security system or anything ever recognizes him as Ethan Hunt. He has all of this different tech, like he has computers and he has weapons and he has money and these different identities and stuff like that, and not one person catches on. I'm just wondering, where is he getting this help? Where is he getting this information? And that's actually addressed by Alec Baldwin's character in this movie. It's like, how is he getting all this information? How is he stealing all these documents? Like, how does he have all this tech just on hand and stuff like that? So that to me is kind of like a logical error in this movie that kind of bothered me. I was just, you know, I was kind of like, all right, you know, you're on your own for 6 months, you have no one helping you at all, but somehow you still manage to get your hands on all these things and just kind of travel from country to country, continent to continent, completely unscathed. As well as, I don't know if you noticed, but I was saying the positives about the villain, I was saying when he's on screen, and that kind of leads to the double-sided coin here. You know, the flip side to it is the fact that sadly, Sean Harris's Solomon Lane doesn't get a whole lot of screen time. When he is on the screen, he's good. He's a force to be reckoned with. He does a really good job, but he doesn't appear on screen all that much, which really sucks, because if you look back to Mission Impossible 3 with Philip Seymour Hoffman, he is on screen a lot, and not only that, but he is face to face with Tom Cruise a lot. He is right up in his business all the time. That made him such a menacing villain. It made him so good because he made it personal. This movie, it doesn't feel personal all that much. So guys, what can I say? I love this Mission Impossible movie, and it is like neck and neck with Ghost Protocol, guys. It's so close for me, and as you know, I don't base my ranking videos solely off the ratings that I give it. I give it really off of rewatchability and just the overall kind of feel that the movie gives me. So it's making these ranking videos so hard. The Jurassic Park one was so easy. This one is not going to be so easy. To summarize, guys, top of the list, Tom Cruise, Rebecca Ferguson are great. Supporting cast overall is great. The stunts are fantastic. The action is great. The missions are great. It's a really good idea for the villain. It's a much more artistic feel and less cartoony than the last one. I love how it kind of addresses the last movie too. The cinematography is great, and the jumping from place to place, the kind of the traveling, I thought that was really well done as well. And Simon Pegg basically hits every comedic note in this movie. He does a great job at that too. And the negatives, like I said, Fast and Furious syndrome. These guys survive way more than they probably should have. And also, I just kind of want to question, how is Ethan getting all of this tech when he's been like off the grid for 6 months? And just the complete lack of screen time for the villain, because I really like Sean Harris as this villain, and I really like the Syndicate, like the idea of it as a whole, but the fact that they really don't get a whole lot of screen time kind of bothered me. So with all that being said, guys, I'm going to be giving Mission Impossible Rogue Nation a 9 out of 10. If you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know, do you prefer the more grounded, realistic action in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, or do you prefer the more kind of cartoonish, over-the-top stuff from Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol? And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap.